Alright guys, so first up is going to be seated hamstring curl. If you've watched any of my stuff, you know I'm a really firm believer in seated hamstring curls being your main movement for hamstrings. Lying is a good option, but if you could only pick one, I'm definitely a big fan of seated just because of the bracing and the output you're able to get on the exercise. So on your leg days, I'd strongly recommend starting, with a seated hamstring curl or a lying hamstring curl, preferably seated. But, starting with it, it's a very, low impact in terms of like total energy on the session, but very high impact in terms of, really exhausting the hamstrings before you move on to, your compound work. So I have a second hamstring day during the week. This is the only day of the week that I train quads, though. So anything I can do to place more emphasis on quads and, going into my compounds with just absolutely thwacked hamstrings is one of them. While we're warming up, just kind of talking about several of the, teaching points for this one. One of the biggest ones, and this is one, that I need reminded of sometimes, especially those of you that train progressive overload and like really log everything, is at the bottom of the rep, you don't need to pause on every rep, but like for your first couple reps, you should be able to, and I'll show you on a couple warm-up sets, be able to hold that weight in the hole. If you're, swinging with your body and creating momentum, and when you get it to that peak contraction, there's no way in God's gentle green earth you could even think about holding it, and you're just riding it down. It's a little too heavy. You want to lighten it up. So that's something that we're paying a lot of attention to. The other thing we're really paying attention to is, keeping our hips set and not letting our hips unset. So you'll see, when we get all set, we're actually going to have our hips back in the bench and really set. We're not letting them come up as we stretch at the top and then getting them back into position. We're keeping them back and locked into position. What it's going to do is give us a longer hamstring at the top of the movement and then obviously be more stable and allow us to produce more output throughout the whole range. So show you what a warm-up set looks like. This is still relatively light, but what I mean by that is, on your working sets, when you get the weight, that first or second rep of your working set, you should still be able to really get a good squeeze in the hole and hold it if you wanted to. If you're having to go and there's no, that's not what we're doing, that push off with your back while simultaneously humping your hips up and creating that pressure point there just to it down. That's not what we're trying to do. So trying to get locked in, have those hips back, the knee driven up into the pad, stretching as far as we can while keeping those things in mind, and then trying to drive that heel up underneath it and touch it to our butt. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that, but that's the sensation or the feeling that we're going for each and every rep. And you'll see as the sets go heavier, I won't do this exaggerated hold in the bottom of each rep, but I will have that same sensation of truly reaching and owning the peak contraction on each rep. Why the seatbelt? This is something that I picked up from Joe Bennett, something that I really like for the heavier sets, but And if you think about which way the force is acting and where you're braced from. So when you first start, this is going straight up, you're pushing down, and this is braced right here. So if you're pushing down here, it's going to be wanting to lift your hips up. As you make it through the exercise and you get this to this position, you're pushing it this way, it's actively resisting you that way. It's pulling your hips that way. So the entire time you're performing the exercise, your hips will be pulling up and out. And that's not what we want to do. Like I said, we're doing making a lot of effort to keep our hips down and anchored in it. So for the heavier sets, it allows us to brace a lot better. And if you've never tried it before, I would encourage you to try it. The first set that you do it with, you'll feel a big difference in the amount of contraction you're able to get with your hamstring. So I really like it. I'm a fan of it. I use it.